scenario, prayer is a step into the unknown and a surrender to the possibility that life is larger than might have imagined. And that in 1 foot, and I hope that was under 10 minutes, is the Jewish position on prayer. Thank you.
Yes, I also want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this wonderful event tonight. And as I respond to the questions actually I received from Mr. Saran, because before I came, I wanted to know why this topic about the power of prayer came up, so that I will be able to really know how to respond. And during the introduction, you probably heard that I work actually as a chaplain supervisor at Baylor Health Care System. So I'm a hospital chaplain. And in our email correspondence, I learned 2 questions for me to contemplate, reflect, so that I can respond. So as I reflect, I would like to mention to you those 2 questions first. The first question was, what does prayer mean to you? And the second question was, how would you describe the effect of prayer on a hospitalized individual's psychology? So, as I prepare to answer these questions the best I can, please also keep in mind, I'm speaking from a tricultural and also Presbyterian, Asian American perspective, because that's my background. So the first question, what does prayer mean for you? Prayer for me means the conversation with God. If according to a Quranic verse, have mercy upon us, for thou art the best of those who show mercy. Prayers, especially in the hospital setting, is a conversation with God, calling this merciful God to show compassion at a time of trial, especially with physical ailment. So according to my Asian American Protestant Christian theology, there are 3 kinds of prayers being offered in the hospital. 1 is unloading our concerns to God. 2 is seeking reconciliation. And 3 is working through the change of heart and placing ourselves in God's hand. So to unload our concerns to God. According to the book of Matthew in the Bible, Jesus taught his disciples saying, "Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Since Jesus has offered to provide rest and comfort to us when we are weary in coping with our illnesses and the challenging medical treatments, it is comforting to know that we can pray and unload our concerns to God. And 2, in the hospital, we are also praying to seek reconciliation. It is my understanding that our physical illness cannot be separated from our spiritual or emotional struggles. In fact, it may not be too strange to say that sometimes our physical ailment is caused by our spiritual distress, such as alienation from God, our loved ones, or even the alienation with our own self. Also, when we are faced with our mortality, very often, patients seek to reflect and re-examine their relationships with God, with their own selves, and with people around them to make peace if those relationships has been strained. Recently, I visited a Muslim patient who began to reflect on the end of her life. She shared with me how sometimes she wished to hear directly from God for assurance of eternity. With my limited understanding of Islam, I began to recount with her the good deeds she has done with her deceased husband, hoping that as she remembers those things she did for the Muslim community, she could feel comforted as she prepares for the end of her life. I may not be able to pronounce this author's name well, but please bear with me. Dr. Sayyid Hussein Nasser, he states in his book that the heart of Islam is that witnessing to the oneness of the divine reality, the universality of the truth, the necessity of submission to God's will, the fulfilling of human responsibilities, and respect for the rights of all things. So what I did with this patient was to reflect on how she witnessed to the divine reality and fulfilled her responsibilities as she and her husband built a small mosque for a small Muslim community in Dallas, and how she is now submitting herself to God's will at this time of her life. Even though we may not be praying as we prostrate on the ground and uttered our desires to God, I believe we, in fact, did pray to God. And we also reconciled with God as we reviewed her life and confirmed the right relationships she has maintained with God, others, and also with herself. 3, prayer is also an effort to work through the change of heart. Often, it is difficult for patients to accept the loss they have to endure, such as loss of health or loss of bodily function. It takes time for a person to work through grief in order to embrace the altered reality and to live with it. Therefore, prayer is to seek God's help for the change of heart, the change of perspectives, so individuals can let go of the need to control and let God take care of their situation by placing themselves in God's hand. So now the second question. How would you describe the effect of a prayer on a hospitalized individual's psychology? When thinking about the effect of prayer, it will be difficult to measure how prayer might have contributed to curing a patient. But as you have heard from Reverend McLemore, I believe there is a difference between cure and healing. So I will talk a little bit more about that. And I believe that spiritually and emotionally or psychologically, I'm sure that patients feel strengthened as they gain a peace of mind after a prayer is offered. This past weekend, I visited a patient who requested for a chaplain to assist her in completing her advanced directives. Advanced directives is a written document providing direction to medical team regarding her care if at a later time she would not be able to make it known herself. As we conversed, I found out that she suffers from bipolar, and she was also wrestling with strained family relationships. After exploring her relationships with her family members, she shared with me